everyone, I'm Lily, and today I am going back to moving slowly backwards through the sets for my top 10 cards for Commander Cube series, because I love this series, and it's been a few weeks since I did the last one, so I'm like, alright, it's time for another one, because I'm also lazy and don't feel like doing a more complex video tonight. I will admit that these are not the hardest videos to do, but I still like doing them. And, okay, I should say, I've done the prep work for a lot of them ahead of time, and stuff like that. So it's like, I already have these written, I should say. They're about as much work otherwise. It's just, I've already done the work on these. But yeah, today we're doing Rivals of Ixalan as we continue moving backwards. Took a short break for Alpha and Beta, but moving backwards, and I was thinking maybe I'll do Ixalan and have that ready to go, but then kind of running a poll after every video to see, like, kind of, I don't know, what set people like next. So yeah, no, if you want to, like, let me know what set you'd be interested in, and maybe just start, like, hopping around a bit. And when I do the next review, we can talk about what we want to do. So, any set that introduces new cards is valid. So, any, like, normal set, so if it, like, Kaladesh or Zendikar or, I don't know, Dark Ascension, are all valid, but also, like, if you want, like, Conspiracy 1 or Commander 2015 or something like that. So, those are all valid. Anything that added new cards is cool. So let me know what you want, and I'll populate probably the first poll that'll go on the next video with the results of that one. But yeah, so for those of you who have not seen one of these series before, it is my top 10 cards for Commander Cube. Commander Cube is an awesome format that, if you don't know about it, I've done a video on it, and if you just search Commander Cube on my channel, you should be able to find it. Well, it should be the first video in my Commander Cube playlist, because I actually have a specific playlist for just my Commander Cube videos. But it's an awesome format where it's cube, like, you draft, like, it and everything, but instead of making a 40-card limited deck, you're building a whole commander deck from it, and it's a lot of cool. So, the main criteria I'm talking about when I am doing these videos is, there's a few restrictions. One, I don't look at reprints. No, this isn't a big issue in Rivals of Ixalan. The Ixalan block didn't have that many, like, reprints that are noteworthy reprints. And two, I don't look at legendary creatures, because every Commander Cube handles how they do legendary creatures differently, as well as most of the lists would just be dominated by their legendary creatures if you included legendaries, if that makes sense. So, but what am I looking for, like, in these cards? I want cards that are exciting. I want, like, some videos I have honorable mentions, which are, like, good cards, good staple cards that go into a Commander Cube, but aren't really kind of, like, they don't really bring anything new to the table. Things like board wipes, like, just decent removal and things like that. Those all go into that category where they make good additions to a Commander Cube, but it's not like you pack one, you open up your first pack and you're like, yes, I want to go into this. Like, the best cards are the ones you want to see pack one, pick one, and being like, okay, I'm going in, I'm doing this. But yeah, so, words, I mean, thanks, I was going somewhere from that. But yeah, and I have some other criteria that I'll talk about as I go through this, but, this set doesn't actually have I didn't actually have any honorable mentions. Rivals of Ixalan has a lot of cool stuff for Commander Cube, but it's very concentrated. It is the first small set we've looked at, because this was like the last block set, so it's the last small set that has existed. But we'll just jump into it right now, and we are starting off with, at number 10, we have the Immortal Sun, which is a 6-mana legendary artifact. Players cannot activate Planeswalker's loyalty abilities. At the beginning of your draw step, draw an additional card. Spells you cast cost 1 less to cast, and creatures you control get +1/+1. Okay, this is obviously a very good card, and honestly a card that you'd be kind of excited to pack one, pick one, and you'd just be excited to just pick up at any point, like any deck, as long as you're not like playing like Super Friends, or I know in my cube you can play Planeswalkers and Commander, and that is awkward. If you have a Planeswalker Commander, maybe you don't want to run this. But besides that, it's just very generically good, and while it is good for the cube, that's why it's this low, it's just because it doesn't push you in any direction. It just is kind of like, it keeps you very open. And one thing I found in the Commander Cube is that there is the tendency to just want to stay really open and stuff and not really commit to anything too soon. And well, it's valid to do that. I find that you really kind of want to choose a lane early on. Otherwise you just kind of end with like a generic kind of good stuff deck, which there's nothing wrong with that, but it isn't as fun or exciting as actually getting like a good theme going. But that said, this is one of those cards which you're almost never disappointed to see. And it does a lot, and it's just real solid. Number 9, we have Twilight Prophet, which is 2 black for a 2/4 with Ascend. I'm just going to talk about Ascend once, but if you weren't playing during Ravels of Ixalan, Ascend is essentially cards do a little bit more if you have something called the City's Blessing. You get the City's Blessing if you control a permanent or you cast a spell with Ascend on it, and you get it if you have 10 or more permanents. Ascend is very easy in Commander because it's a long game, and that counts lands, and just having 10 things out is not hard in Commander. So it usually just means it isn't online in the early turns of the game, but it'll be online in the later turns of the game. Also to be noted that once you have Ascend, if say you go below 10 permanents, you still have the City's Blessing. It's just online for the rest of the game. But it's a 2/4 flying and Ascend, and at the beginning of your upkeep, if you have the City's Blessing, reveal the top card of your library and put it into your hand. Each opponent loses X life and you gain X life, where X is that card's converted mana cost. So it's just a very efficient kind of like almost reverse Start Confidant effect, where you don't lose life, you actually drain that life. And it has like some nice synergies. So like if you're like, while it has synergies with life gain, and I have a tendency to overvalue life gain cards because it's my favorite archetype in Commander. But like it's not its main thing, but it's just a decent like card value engine. If it sticks around. I mean, it is a big target though, so it doesn't stick around that much. But having cards powerful enough to be a big target isn't the worst thing to have. The worst thing to have in the world. And that's why it's slow. It is just a card draw engine, but I think it does it in a really cool way, and it has enough stuff going on that I think it warrants its position here. Next we have Direfleet Daredevil, which is a 1 in a red for a 2/1 with First Strike. When they enter the battlefield, exile target instant or sorcery card from an opponent's graveyard. You may cast that card this turn, and you may spend mana as though it were mana of any type to cast that spell. If that card would be put into a graveyard this turn, exile it instead. So essentially, it's the reverse Snapcaster Mage, where you cast it, and you could cast an opponent's instant or sorcery. And Snapcaster Mage is a good spell, and in Commander, you also have like more like choices in your opponents, where it's likely one of them will have something you want, and it's just a really cool kind of effect. Like even more if you have any sort of like flickering shenanigans going on, but yeah, there's not much to be said. Like obviously like some, it's one of those like very generically useful things, but it is kind of up there because a thing that like also raises like a card in its value to me is on this list is giving red and white access to like the two things they're not good at, which is card draw and ramp. And while this doesn't directly do that, it allows you to grab that from an opponent if you want to, where if you want to ramp, you can't just grab your opponent's Kodama's Reach, or if you want to just draw cards, you can draw it one of many draw spells or something. that said, it doesn't do that early, because you need both to cast this Abbot Stick and have the mana to cast that spell, which means that like you're not Kodama's reaching until like you have 5 mana, which is like, do you really need to be you're kind of like the pivotal time to be rampings past that point, but it is nice. And that's why it's not higher on this list like I have for other things that get around red and white's weaknesses, but it's still there. Next up we have Profane Procession, which is the first of the flip lands. I really like these in these 2 sets, where on the front side they are an enchantment or an artifact, and then they flip over into a land, and they're overall just very good. And also one thing to note, that if you use like a fair few of these flip lands in your cube, is that you will want to also have some answers to them in your cube, where you're going to want to make sure that you do have some like targeted land destruction in your cube, which is, I mean, if like it's one of those things where it's like before Ixalan and Rivals of Ixalan, if you had like a lower powered commander cube, you didn't really have to care too much about targeted land destruction, because I mean most of the lands that are dangerous to like and you want to blow up aren't particularly budget cards, like things like Urborg and Ball Coffers, Mazes of Ith, and things like that, where they're not the cheapest cards because they're usually pretty old cards. But these flip into much more powerful effects, and if you have too many of these in there, you're going to want to have ways for the other players to deal with them while they're flipped. But talking about this one, it's Profane Profession, which is a 1 white and a black for a legendary enchantment that does nothing but it has an activated ability of 3 white and a black to exile target creature. Then, if there are 3 more cards exiled of Profane Procession, transform it. So, it's a removal spell where it's kind of like you put it down and then it's a lot of mana, but it is a repeatable kind of like just exile effect, and that's very powerful, especially when it flips. When it becomes the Tomb of the Dusk Road, which can tap for any color of mana, which is fine. It's a land. And having that utility is nice. That these all do ramp you a little bit. Granted, by this time you're flipping this one, it isn't that useful for the ramp parts. But for 2 white and a black and tap it, you may put a creature card exiled of this permanent onto the battlefield under your control. So it lets you essentially, after you activate this 3 times, you get to steal their creature. So it's kind of like a delayed steal, and you get to reanimate them in that way, which is just a really cool effect. And it's removal and stealing them. It is very mana intensive, but Commander is the format where you're going to have that mana to be able to use it, and it's just real solid. And it's removable, but it does it in a very unique and kind of flashy way. Next we have Path of Discovery, which is 3 and a green for an enchantment. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, it explores. So you reveal the top card of your library and put that card into your hand if it's a land. Otherwise, put a +1/+1 counter on it, and then then you can either choose to mill that card or keep it on top. So this is one of those, it's so powerful in a multitude of decks. Like, obviously you want to be a creature-based deck, which if you're green, you're likely to be. In a token deck, it's insane for just the amount of like card advantage and filtering and any sort of +1/+1 counter synergies goes well in there. And it just goes into so many different kinds of decks while still kind of like helps supporting different like specific themes. And for like that is kind of like the best place to have like the bulk of the cards in your cube at, where it very much benefits one particular archetype, but it is useful to all, like any can still be useful, it's just more useful to that archetype, but it's still generically useful, and Path of Discovery just hits that very well. Because it's just like amazing in +1/+1 themes. It's amazing in any sort of graveyard themes, because you can just fill up your graveyard very quickly. Any sort of like token theme, it's just amazing card advantage, and yeah, no, Path of Discovery is just very nice. It's honestly one of my favorite cards from the set, just in general. Next we have our next flip card, which is Journey to Eternity, which is 1 black and a green for a legendary enchantment aura. Enchant creature you control. When that creature dies, return it to the battlefield under your control. Then transform Journey to Eternity to the battlefield, transformed under your control. So it essentially lets, like, you have to be careful because you make sure that you're not. It has all the major like weaknesses of auras. If they remove your creature in response or bounce it or things like that, if they exile their creature, you don't get that trigger. So obviously it's best if you have any sort of like sack outlet to get it back or something. So it's like very good in any sort of like aristocracy type build. But otherwise it kind of very much fits in the Golgari side because it's transformed side, which is Ixalan, Cave of Eternity, which taps for any color mana. Pretty generically, and this one's like only turn 3. Like if you like have a sack outlet or you have like say like a Sakura Tribe Elder that you cast this on, like Sakura Tribe Elder turn 2, turn 3 this, then Sakura Tribe Elder transform this, you bring your Elder back, you sack it again. Okay, that's living the dream, because then all of a sudden it's turn 3 and you have 6 mana. But and you can pay 3 black green to untap this to return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. So technically, even wait, no, it's a Sakura Tribe Elder. I was about to say, like, you could even then tap all of those lands again and bring out your Elder again, but no, you can't do that. Sorry, ignore me. But it's just a repeatable reanimation effect where you do have to jump through some hoops to flip this card, but it's not like impossible hoops to jump through. And it is just very powerful, and it's like I say for like gold cards, where in any sort of like cube design, gold cards are risky. You need to have that payoff, and this is just one of those payoffs that any deck wants. And some one of those situations where it's like any deck wants these, but that kind of aristocrats graveyard deck wants the most, and that's where you kind of want to be. Next up we have Azor's Gateway, which is a 2-mana artifact. You can pay 1 and tap it to draw a card, then exile a card from your hand. If cards 5 or more different converted mana costs are exiled with Azor's Gateway, you gain 5 life, untap Azor's Gateway, and transform it. So in the front half, it's just a loot stick, which isn't bad. Like most decks wouldn't mind just having be able to just loot away their stuff. But one benefit of Commander, though, is that you have a much wider range of CMC of stuff that you're running, where flipping this isn't impossible, and it has a very nice payoff if it does, where it has a lot of great game-ending potential if you flip this. Because on its backside, you have the Sanctum of the Sun, which you can tap it to add X mana of any one color to your mana pool, where X is your life total. So it just taps for a ton of mana if you can get it flipped, and there's plenty of different ways to get this flipped, and yeah, no, it's just very good. I have it up here because it's, yes, on its front half, it is very much kind of like a very standard loot type effect, but the fact that if you do flip it and it has such a high payoff, where it has that goal of okay, it is an infinite mana sink, but it does push you in a deck design direction of okay, this is a deck that maybe wants to make just a lot of mana for ramp and stuff, and has payoffs, things like fireballs and other effects like that, giant assimilating inferno and effects like that can be, if you flip this, you can then win the game from that. And I like it as this very piece that is good without all the pieces, but with the pieces can just be the win condition of a deck. And I really like those two combination of things for this card. More flip lands here. We have Storm Vault, which is 2 blue and a red for legendary enchantment. Whenever one or more creatures you control deals combat damage to a player, create a colorless treasure to artifact token with, you can sacrifice it to add a color of mana. At the beginning of your end step, if you control 5 or more artifacts, transform it. this is one where it very much does push you into an artifact deck, and you kind of want to be in an artifact deck. And honestly, that combat phase is nice, and it's not bad if you have the ability to. But mostly it's ideally you play this and you transform it that turn, because if your opponents have any sort of have an answer, they will want to use it, because its backside is the Vault of Kotlikon, which is you can tap to add one mana of any color, or tap blue, tap to add blue mana to your mana pool for each artifact you control. So it transforms into Tolarian Academy, which is just, there's a reason it's banned in Commander, because this is another one where it just adds a lot of mana. And this one's slightly higher because this one pushes you much more into a very specific deck archetype, which is that artifact deck. And it's also one of those payoffs where you open this turn like, I want to make this artifact deck work. And yeah, I don't have much else to say about it. It's just, there's not much to say. Like, it's just a very good card. And people are like, it doesn't generate as much mana as Sanctum of the Sun, but I just like the fact that it has that little bit narrow focus, and it's not just very generically useful like Azor's Gateway is. Next up we have Kumina's Awakening, which is 2 blue for an enchantment with Ascend. At the beginning of your upkeep, each player draws a card. If you have the City's Blessing, instead only you draw a card. I am a sucker for any type of like Howling Mine effect. And this is a cool one where it's like, you can just drop this turn 4. Okay, you can wait, like, it has that group hugginess, and I love group hug cards in Commander Cube in general. Just because, even just not as like a group hug mechanic, but from like a gameplay point of view, like filling the cube with group hug mechanics, because it helps speed games like group hug type stuff. Obviously some don't, but like things like everyone drawing extra cards and things like that has potential for helping speed up games, helps smooth out players, and like, I don't know, helps players get a little bit more even footing. Which is one of those things where it's like, you've always been in that situation where early in the game you get tripped up on mana and you're kind of out of the game, it's not a good experience. And things like cards like this help those players get out of those situations without them having to play the cards. And for me, that's important to me as a cube designer, where I want to make kind of this equitable experience. And group hug cards like this are great. And this one's good because players are a little bit more willing to run this, where they may not run a Howling Mine unless they can take advantage of it themselves, but they're much more willing to play Kumina's Awakening, because they're like, okay, eventually it'll just be benefiting me in the end, and it'll be all fine and dandy, even if for a few turns my opponents get cards as well. But yeah, also it's just I really like that art. It's really cool art. And finally at number 1 we have Mastermind's Acquisition, which is 2 black for sorcery. Choose 1. Search your library for a card. Put it into your hand and then shuffle your library. Or choose a card you own from outside the game and put it into your hand. So this is a tutor. So on one hand it's just it's a diabolic tutor, which is fine. I have it in my cube because I'm of the opinion where it's like, I'm actually very anti-tutor in EDH, because part of the appeal to EDH is just the variety of, one of the appeals of a 100-card singleton is the fact that your decks don't play out the same every game. And sure, EDH has the one caveat of except you have your commander, and I like it to just be except you have your commander, and that's it. Where I don't mind narrow tutors, but like generic tutors, I am not a fan of. But Mastermind's Acquisition, I do quite like. Or I should say, I like tutors in Commander Cube though, because let's be honest, you're only going to be drafting a given deck in Cube, or playing it, I should say, maybe once, maybe twice, before the group has to break for the evening because you've been playing Commander Cube for like 6 hours now. And tutors help smooth that out and make that good. And the reason I like this one is that also in Commander, normally you don't have a sideboard in Commander unless you have to house rule it. So Mastermind Acquisition is one of those places where it fits perfectly in Commander Cube, because you do have a sideboard. It's all the cards you didn't draft, and you actually have a pretty extensive sideboard. And I just like the idea of just like having that like extra. Okay, we have to find the answer to this. You draw your Mastermind's Acquisition, and all of a sudden you have this pile of, I don't know. In my cube, you draft 7 packs 15, which is math, about 100 cards, give or take a few. And say you're playing maybe 60 of those, which means you have 40 more cards to go through. Granted, some of them may not be able to, may not be on color, but also this gets around color identity rules, where you can grab a card from your sideboard that isn't in your commander's colors if you have like Dark Seal relics, and you can still cast them that way. So, it has some cool ways to get around that, and like that like uncastable card that's like, oh, this doesn't fit my color identity, but it's really cool. You can bring it in out of your sideboard and things like that, and I think that's really cool. It has a lot of potential, and it just fits this format very well, and I like that a lot. So, yeah. Well, that has been my list for Rifles of Ixalan. I actually really like this set for Commander. Also Ixalan 2 I actually really like for Commander. These ones actually were a bit easier to choose though, these two sets, because they were tribal sets, and tribal doesn't work the best in Commander Cube, just because you have to commit a lot of the cube's real estate to make one tribe work. That's why I use Tales and Poems, and while I use a lot of these cards from these sets in Tales and Poems, I don't include those in my lists because it's not standard to Commander cubes, or that's just something that my cube does unique. But yeah, no, let me know if you disagree, if there's some card in my rankings I'm like that I highly undervalued, or I don't know. And yeah, also let me know what sets you want to see in the future for me to do top 10 stuff, and I'll probably put a poll in the next video I do in a few weeks when I do just the Ixalan top 10. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you enjoy the series. I'm still gonna keep making it because I love this series, because I love Commander Cube. It's rad. As always, if you have ever had a chance to draft a Commander Cube, if someone offers to you, say yes, because it's awesome, and it's amazing, it's a blast. But yeah, well, I hope you all have a wonderful night, and I hope you all have wonderful dreams. And as always, may our stories smile upon you.